Good evening. It's called the Cockroach Movement, backed by tens of millions on social media. It's led by Gen Z protesters in India who are demanding education and political reforms. Thousands of supporters have been blockading the centre of Delhi for nearly 2 months. Then, on Monday, this happened. A violent police crackdown which left dozens of protesters and officers injured. So how did we get here? Well, it all started with this. Have a look.
There are already parasites in society who attack you people, you attack the system, and you want to join hands with them.
No, my lord. I understand, my lord.
Have you seen there are youngsters like cockroaches. They don't get any employment. They don't have any place in profession. Some of them become media. Some of them become social media. Some of them become RTI activists. Some have become another activists, and they start attacking everyone.
That's the Chief Justice of India comparing unemployed youth to parasites and cockroaches. And this was the very Gen Z response. A jokey tweet from an Indian student who's recently graduated from a university in the US. He suggested, what if all cockroaches came together? And they did. Followers of the movement's Instagram page surpassed India's ruling party in just 4 days. That number now stands at nearly 25 million. That's more than double that of the BJP. The Cockroach Party is giving a voice to wider frustrations about a corrupt education and job system where exam papers are leaked and sold to the highest bidder. And 40% of graduates aged 25 and under are unemployed. And the protests have swelled again after a prominent activist who's been on hunger strike was forcibly taken to hospital. So could this movement become a real challenge to the powerful right-wing government of Narendra Modi? We'll focus on that tonight. Our India reporter Neville Lazarus has been hearing from supporters in Delhi.
They are neither deterred nor fearful. Across the capital city, thousands of young people again ready to protest despite the stifling heat.
We are peacefully protesting. We have been doing that for over a month now. So that is what the aim is, and we will continue until we get the accountability that we are asking for, and that will actually end up with the education minister resigning.
A dialogue is all we need. A dialogue, this is just so basic for a democracy like us. So our dialogue which comes out and acknowledges some sort of accountability. This government has forgotten that there is accountability. We've forgotten that we need to ask for accountability.
The government has not budged, instead ordered a severe crackdown on protesters. They hit me on my head, on my face. I would have lost an eye. I've had stitches, and when I fell, they beat me mercilessly on my legs. When I tried to stand up, one hit me on my chest and I fell. I don't know what kind of enmity they had with me.
Are you not scared of what can happen to you again?
We are scared of what can happen, but it can be only a physical injury. But what we are suffering from right now is an injury to our futures. We are not promised a bright future. We are not promised a fair exam. We are not promised a right opportunity in this country. And this is my country. This is their country, and everyone wants that.
On Monday, they broke through police barriers and marched to Parliament while the House was in session. Many were detained. And then came the crackdown. For hours, tear gas rained down. The police and paramilitary launched relentless baiting charges. Few escaped unscathed. Many of those injured were students barely out of their teens, including young women. Delhi police maintains that no force was used and insisted the situation was being handled professionally. But our images tell a different story. The site that stood for weeks was torn down and cleared, but was reclaimed by students just a few hours later. The popularity of this movement is a clear warning. There is deep-seated anger and alienation among the country's youth. To ignore it without addressing the root causes could be a big mistake. Neville Lazarus, Sky News at Jantar Mantar in Delhi.
So what's the end goal for the Cockroach Junta Party? I asked the group's spokesperson, Vaishnavi Gaur. Vaishnavi, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. If you could just explain to me what is currently happening in Delhi, because we are seeing all sorts of images of thousands of young people out on the streets in central Delhi at the moment. But just talk me through what is happening.
So yes, currently around millions of people, millions of students, especially the youth, right now out in the streets, and majority of it is linked to the education system problems. Since past 1 month, there have been protests happening on repeated paper leaks, compromised education systems, and for the past 1 month, there have been a peaceful, completely non-violent sit-in at New Delhi, Jantar Mantar, the designated protest site. One of the renowned educationists of India, Sonam Wangchuk, was also setting on a hunger strike. The Cockroach Movement Party, which started as a satire, had asked for the resignation of India's education minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, under whose tenure we have seen multiple paper leaks. So that was the continued demand. The protests saw increasing support by the students. And in India, we had the start of a monsoon session, the parliament session on 20th July. Throughout the 1 month, when thousands of youngsters were just sitting peacefully, we asked the government to have a dialogue, but there was no dialogue. So it was decided that we will give a call to march to the parliament in a very peaceful manner, so that they listen to the citizens, to the youth. 20th of July. Before that, the educationist who was on hunger strike was abducted from the site. He was wrapped in sheets by Delhi police, who came in very plain clothes, and he was abducted from the site. However, the march still continued. On 20th July, millions of youngsters were out in the street, were out very peacefully with a book in their hand. But what happened was completely opposite of what these youngsters, who were largely in the age group from 14 to 25, expected. There was a brutal crackdown, unlike anything that I have seen. It was also one of the largest protests in the history of India. And what happened was that the police used tear gas, paint charges, pellet guns. Male policemen were seen slapping young women. Kids as young as 12-year-old were hit. Citizens as old as 70 years old were hit. Everyone, no one was spared. There was heavily barricaded, anti-riot force was used. I don't think that there are enough words in which I can tell you or describe what happened on Monday. However, despite that brutality, the students who were injured, who were admitted in various parts of the hospitals of this country, regrouped in the evening, in the night, and the protests are still continuing. However, the only response from the government has been increased in security deployment. No dialogue has been initiated. A very fundamental ask by the youth that the education minister should resign has not been taken up. Not even in the dialogue.
I want to ask a little bit more about your demands, and we saw the crackdown that took place a couple of days ago. So right now we're seeing thousands of young people, tens of thousands of people gather in that area. Just talk us through what you're currently doing. So despite the crackdown, you're back in central Delhi, and do you have intentions of trying to trigger some kind of dialogue with the government, or are you planning on just continuing your sit-in?
No, right now what happened is that we have one very, very fundamental demand, that the education minister of Dharmendra Pradhan should resign. In his tenure, there have been multiple paper leaks. In fact, in the last 5 years, there have been more than 70 paper leaks in this country. And the regroup after the brutal crackdown, it's a reflection of the anguish of the young, who are still, after even being injured, after being beaten brutally, are sitting there. From our end, we have asked the government again and again to come and have a dialogue, to come and give the resignation, to come and at least facilitate conversation with the young people. Nothing of that sort has happened. What we want to do is to channelize this energy that is flowing in the streets of New Delhi into a very productive outlet.
Yes, we understand that several dozen young people have been left injured and hospitalized as a result of the crackdown. Are you worried and fearful that they could launch another crackdown on these protesters?
Absolutely, we're worried. In fact, right now as I'm speaking, In the area itself, there has been an internet shutdown. The security deployment has been increased manifold. This is despite the fact that the citizens have come back, the youth have come back. This is despite all of it. We intend to stay as long as it takes to get the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan, because this is a very fundamental question. It is a fundamental question of accountability. India is the biggest democracy. We've had history of protest. We've had history of governments initiating dialogue with the protesters, and we expect just that. It's just not about the resignation of Education Minister. We have been wanting for a complete overhaul of public examination system in India. India's public examination system is one of the cornerstone of intergenerational mobility for any student who comes from a lower socioeconomic background. We've put together a charter demand with 5 demands, how to fix it, the examination system. Until and unless some sort of accountability comes in the system, it will keep on happening. The first thing that we need the government to do, we need the government to start from, is from the resignation.
Vaishnavi Gaur, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme from Delhi. So defiance there from one of the spokespeople of the Cockroach Movement. But can people power make a difference? I've been speaking to Siddharth Varadarajan, founding editor of The Wire, one of India's largest independent news sites.
Well, it's a combination of several factors, but I think two in the main. I think many of your viewers would be interested to know or confused about the name of this party, Cockroach Janta Party. And the name essentially comes from a rather odd statement that the Chief Justice of India made, I guess about a month and a half ago, when in the context of a hearing on some matter, he referred to young people, and in particular unemployed young people, as parasites and cockroaches. And that statement of his was it triggered a lot of anger, of course, among young people, Gen Z, and one of these young people, Abhijit Deepke, who was then living in America, studying in Boston, essentially posted something on Instagram where he said, we're going to form the Cockroach Janta Party, and it just went viral. Within days, millions of people were following him and supporting him. And the issue that he took up was the fact that a common entrance exam for India's medical colleges had been, the question paper was leaked, obviously by some kind of a corrupt cabal. And this meant that millions of kids around India had to retake this exam. It caused a lot of distress. There are reports of perhaps over a dozen kids who, young women and men students who committed suicide as a result of this happening. And so there was a lot of anger against the government for its mishandling, its inability to administer a simple exam, and its failure to crack down on corruption. And as often happens, people sought to fix political accountability, and they zeroed in on Narendra Modi's education minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, and demanded that he resign. Often in India, if you look at the last 70 years, you can find instances of ministers quitting, being asked to go, whenever there's something disastrous that happens on their watch. And this is a demand that kids raised, students raised, and many people felt it was quite reasonable.
But what I would have to say is, I guess, as you say, many people would think that that's a reasonable request. But clearly the authorities didn't think that, because the images that we're seeing coming out of Delhi, the brutal way in which they're handling the situation with the protesters, the crackdown that we've seen, and quite shocking images of young kids, some as young as 14 or 15 or 16 years old, being beaten up by the police. I think that was quite shocking.
You're right. I mean, frankly, there is only, you said authorities in the plural. In India today, there is only one authority that matters, and that's Narendra Modi. And for Modi, the demand for a minister's resignation is seen as something of a personal affront, because he has so personalized government over the last 12 years. Everything is linked to him. You have a major cult of personality going on. So you can't afford to let a minister go without part of that blame sticking onto you. And so I guess Modi, decided that there was no way he's going to accept this call for a resignation, right? And so then the issue came, how are you going to handle a protest involving young people that has been peaceful from the outset? The government assumed that this wouldn't last more than a few days, but they held out. And at some stage, this began to attract greater and greater attention nationally, despite, I have to say, big media covering up and not really, essentially taking the government side. But through social media, this became an issue that was attracting the attention of young people around the country. And so you had kids thronging to Jantar Mantar. So on this crucial day when they decided that they were going to break their fast and march on Parliament for Modi, this was something completely unacceptable. And he got the police to resort to force, which is the only way that, frankly, he believes dissent has to be handled, which is that you don't allow people to gather, you don't allow people to protest.
Siddharth, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.